Kia ora, everyone, and welcome to Weekender at 5, where we bring you the biggest news headlines from New Zealand and India. My name is Preeti Garude, and I'll be your host for this evening. Let's look at the main evolving story of the day. Judith Collins has stepped down as the National Party leader. Dr. Shane Reti is the interim leader of the National Party after Judith Collins lost a no confidence vote. Here's an update of how things have evolved since last night. Late last evening, Judith Collins demoted Simon Bridges via a media release following an accusation he made inappropriate comments to a female national MP several years ago. The news came after much speculation that Simon Bridges was considering a tilt at the top job. Simon Bridges was accused of making crude remarks in front of MP Jackie Dean and other MPs several years ago during a caucus function. This morning, before the National Party caucus meeting, Simon Bridges said that Judith Collins will go to any length to hold on to her leadership of the party. Now, after 2 hours of the caucus meeting, it was announced that the caucus issued a motion of no confidence in Judith Collins, thereby resulting in her stepping down. Simon Bridges is not ruling out taking another tilt at the leadership, saying he will consider it over the next 2 days. National's new leader will be elected on Tuesday. Moving on to COVID news, there are 178 new community cases reported by the Ministry of Health. In a statement, the ministry said that there are 77 people in hospital, including 8 in ICU. It has also reported a COVID-related death of a patient at Auckland City Hospital yesterday afternoon. The patient was in their 50s and was admitted to the hospital on the 5th of November. That brings the total number of deaths in the latest outbreak to 16. The government today also announced a raft of new COVID-19 supports, including $204.1 million to support people self-isolating, $300 million for Pharmac to buy new COVID-19 medicines and make rapid antigen testing widely available. Under the new COVID care and community model, Health Minister Andrew Little said, most people who test positive for COVID will receive initial contact from healthcare providers within 24 hours, a support pack within 48 hours, and regular health checks. Minister for Social Development and Employment, Carmel Sepuloni, has announced $204.1 million will be provided for region-specific and locally led responses. Rapid antigen testing will be more widely available for both businesses and the general public from the 1st of December as a part of a new national testing strategy. Yesterday, the Reserve Bank of New Zealand announced the hike in the official cash rate by 0.25% to 0.75%. The Reserve Bank governor signaled yesterday's hike was the first of many between now and next year as he attempts to keep inflation in check and cool down runaway price rises. So what does this mean for first home buyers and those looking at getting on the property ladder? We spoke to Venu from Squirrel Mortgages about the effect of this hike on home buyers. Venuji, thank you so much for joining me on Indian Weekender. Welcome to Weekender at 5.
Thank you, Preeti ji, and wishes to all the viewers. And it's great talking to you always.
Thank you. This worked out to be a really interesting week for first home buyers as well as for people who are looking at getting their foot on the property ladder, because the Reserve Bank yesterday announced that announced increase in OCR rate. So, they've increased the OCR from 0.25 to now it's gone up to 0.75. And that has a lot of repercussions in terms of first home buyers as well as people who are looking at entering the property market. So I thought I'd bring in an expert to come and talk about this. So I'll ask you a question and then we can just start our discussion. Is if you can just tell me what is going to be what is the result of the increase in OCR, and we can actually just start with clarifying a little bit about what OCR is and why that was increased as well.
Yep. Firstly, Preeti ji, before I start any conversation, we just talk about the disclaimer, because I'm a mortgage advisor since been last more than 15 years now in the industry. Mm-hmm. And we share and we talk and we discuss few things depending on our capacity and our knowledge. And this is not an advice, but it's just my personal opinion and the knowledge I share with the viewers many times. So again, it's not an advice, it's just a conversation and a discussion, a friendly discussion, right?
Sure, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Very true. And coming back to the first question, what is OCR? OCR is an official cash rate, they call it as. This is always from time to time announced by Reserve Bank to control the financial market. And that will influence the market conditions based on the OCR many times, because the funding, all that is based on the official cash rate. So usually the short-term funding, which banks to get money from the Reserve Bank based on the official cash rate. So if the official cash rate is low, then the banks do get the funding at a low rate of interest, and they do lend to the people at a low rate of interest. Now, since the historical lowest gone down so further in the last few years, and that has tremendously put a pressure on the property market and also cost of funding. It is cheap to borrow money. And I've seen in the last 3-4 years, when people used to borrow money to buy $1 million worth of property, the amount of rent getting on a property is way, way higher than what they pay in the interest to the bank on that particular loan. So that's why that has put so much of pressure in the market, and easy to borrow and easy to buy the properties. There's so much of inflation gone, and we have seen over a period of time how the prices have hiked up. Now, what I feel personally is Reserve Bank and the government also put various macro tools to control the property market in the recent months. We talk about the official, the foreign overseas investment, and they have removed the ring fence rule claiming the interest on the property. And also they've increased the capital gain tax from 5 years to 10 years on an existing property. And they also stopped claiming the interest as an expense on the property. So they have done various ways, and the loan to value restrictions to put a more deposit on an investment property. So they have tried in all the ways, but still the most major driving factor I always see was a low rate of interest. And that was still been controlling the market to in a high end. So that's where now they see there is a honest requirement for the speed brakes to put on the property prices going and escalating up and up. So I think that's where the inflation gone up quite a high in the recent years of COVID pandemic and all that, all over economies and the worldwide. The people have been given a low rate of interest to encourage the businesses and all that. So I think it's a point where now the cycle has to change, and they see so much of pressure, and the inflation has gone up so much, and the employment rates are very, very high. So that's why now I think Reserve Bank has realized now it's time for the put back the OCR back into track to control the inflation. And I think it's pretty much predicted, and it's been various talks going on for quite a few months that OCR will start climbing up and all. And what exactly the Reserve Bank has given a message is started implementing it. And it's quite not, it is not a surprising for anybody to see the OCR going up. And I believe I was just reading a couple of articles in the last few days, and I think the OCR will consistently, gradually, it keep going up in the coming times, and which clearly reflects going forward, the cost of money will be high, the interest rates even go further higher.
And just with that point that you mentioned of the interest rates going higher. So as soon as the announcement was made yesterday, so we had ASB and ANZ increasing the floating and the flexible home loan rates. So can you talk about that a little bit as well?
Yeah, sure. You see, that's what I told you. Just we talk about the direct cost of funding from the Reserve Bank. When the OCR goes up, obviously the cost of funds go up, and that's a very quiet phenomenon when banks always try to put up the rates immediately when the rate is going up. But I've seen instances they will take some time to bring down the rate when the OCR going down. So it's quite common, and that's why a couple of banks have already started. And in fact, if you've seen in the last 2 weeks, I think last week, a couple of major banks have already put up their 6 months and 1 year, 2 year rate of interest already high in anticipation that OCR is going to go up. So that means the rate will slightly gone up a bit compared to last week. And I believe the other banks do follow the suit very soon, and the floating rate will definitely go up.
Yeah. So now let's talk about home buyers. So we still, because that has been the trend that has been happening, that especially during COVID, we had a lot of people buying before and after COVID as well. We've had people investing a lot in first home, new builds, everything, and that momentum has still continued a little bit. Like we still see in the news that there are people who are still looking for houses. So what is going to be, or what should the first home buyers expect from here on?
I believe it's really hard to say, but unfortunately, the choices for the first home buyers are literally getting harder at the moment because there is a new CCCFA Act has been implemented in all the banks, and the lending responsible code of lending and the lending rules have changed, and everybody need to follow the compliance and all that. And now, since those rules have kicked in, the banks have gone really tougher in many cases. And I think going forward, getting easy funding is going to be hard. And I think people who have got a decent income, clear history, good saving history, and try to demonstrate the serviceability, they still continue to get the loans, but it's not going to be easy going forward. And I think it will really influence the market a bit, because when the number of people reduce in the market to buy the property, and obviously the demand will reduce, and that will reflect, I think there will be a correction. That's what I expect. There is going to be a small correction in the property prices. At least there will be a speed break for the increasing trend.
And that was actually going to be my next question to you, which you've kind of answered, which was, what do you see? Like, say, suppose if we look at it a year down the line, with the Reserve Bank of New Zealand changing the official, updating the official cash rate over a period of time, a year down the line, do you actually see the property market become a bit stable for it to, for first home buyers to actually have an opportunity, and otherwise as well, like in terms of inflation?
You see, there are two things here. One is it's a twofold impact on the market at the moment. Firstly, the banks are getting tougher as far as the funding is concerned, because they're bringing debt to income ratios as well for the investment property purchasing. And also they have become hard on the first home buyers. In fact, you've seen, a major bank has announced yesterday, for a low deposit rolls, they put a full stop, and another bank also, they put a full stop. In fact, they have withdrawn all the pre-existing approvals also from their system. So that means the chances for the first home buyers with a low deposit loan is really, really tough at the moment. So that means the number of buyers have been reduced ultimately, obviously. And secondly, the other major factor we talked about is interest rates are going up and up, and we will see in future even they go further higher as well. And I think it might, you see, we have already reached nearly close to 4% straight away. And in the next 12 months, everybody is expecting, and the amount of prediction the OCR is going to go up. The indications Reserve Bank is giving us might end up close to 5% interest rates in the 12 months time, and it won't be a surprising. So that's where people started thinking, as I mentioned earlier, at a point of time where people buy $1 million investment property, the rent itself is service mortgages. They don't need to pump in their own money to service the loan. Now, if the rate compared that was 2.5%, now it goes to 5%, it is exactly the double amount of interest they have to pay on a borrowing. So people again struggle to put their own money to bridge the shortfall in the loan repayment from the rental. So that will put a speed break on the investors also to step back further. But having said all this, one sector which the government is really focusing and want to encourage the new build activity. And despite the OCR gone up, floating rate of high, the two major banks who are really doing at the moment for the construction and the new build loans, close to 2.03% interest rate, even though the floating rate is above 4.5% in the market. So that's where I believe there will be a strong demand going forward for the new builds. And I think that's where everybody's trying to encourage to keep that activity intact. And I think most of the people started climbing towards new builds going forward.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much for that insight, Venuji. I really appreciate you taking the time and coming out and having a chat with me about this. I feel like as the OCR rate keeps increasing, we'll probably have more of these conversations with you. So I appreciate you taking the time out and talking to us at In Weekender.
Thank you, Pridhiji. And as I mentioned, Squirrel Mortgages always here to help the customers. And feel free, I've got a team of people working in our company. And any first home buyer, investor, any future, and I mean, any queries in regard to their financial questionnaires, the property market, business loans, or any loans, they talk about OCR, any further information, feel free to call us, get in touch. We try to help you.
Thank you, Venuji. Have a good one.
Thank you. You have a good day.